Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. It's Amy Cunningham again, World Eating Disorders Action Day, and I'm so excited to be here with Rebecca Eyre, who's the CEO of Project Heal. Hi, Rebecca.
Hello.
And also Kristina Saffran, who's the co-founder of Project Heal and also the co-founder of Equip Behavioral Health. Welcome to you both.
Thank you for having us, and thank you again for hosting this beautiful event.
Yes, it's been, the downside of COVID is us being stuck inside. The upside is we're learning how to do things like put these really cool graphics behind our heads. So for the international folks, Rebecca and Kristina are both in the United States. Rebecca, they will talk a little bit about themselves, but they're also, the work that they're doing is really, I think, pertinent for the whole world, to be honest. It's really groundbreaking work. And I wanted to just start off with, in the US, we've been really facing a lot of issues in light of the death of George Floyd, who died while he was being taken into police custody. And there have been lots and lots of protests all over the country, and I think it's sort of weighing on all of us. And I know my friends from overseas, I've been living in Africa for 20 years, are kind of looking at us in the US like, what is going on? The fact that George is an African American and that there have been long kind of targets against people of color, it's just pretty horrible. And I want to acknowledge that pain that people are feeling. I know it's real, and also noting that here we are, we're three white women talking about this, talking about eating disorders, really indicates that we in this field need to do better at diversity. We have a handful of folks who are people of color from around the world who've been involved in World Eating Disorders Day, but I have to say, I know that they are underrepresented and that people have difficulty getting access to treatment, getting even identified. And that is a serious issue. So maybe just to kick off on that topic of injustice and how it's playing out also in the eating disorder field. Do you want to start, Kristina?
Sure, absolutely. Where do you start with this, right? I think we've had a really tragic couple of months, and certainly what happened over this past couple of days has just been really, really horrific to watch yet again, right? Deja vu. I'm hopeful that this is going to be sort of a turning point on a number of fronts for this country, and I think it plays in really well to the injustices that are experienced in the eating disorder field every single day. I mean, we've made, a bit of progress. I think definitely over these last 10 years, I've certainly come in contact with so many people who do not look like me, but frankly, when I was in treatment, it very much recreated that stereotype, right? I went to treatment and the only people I saw there were folks who looked like me, and the only people I saw represented in the eating disorder community were folks who looked like me. And I'm sort of embarrassed to say, but I also started learning when I started Project Heal that is a majority of people with eating disorders are not white, young, thin, upper middle class women, and their experiences look really different. And unfortunately, recovery in this world is way harder for those folks. So you just talk about stacking these barriers of they don't get diagnosed and identified properly, they don't get equal access to treatment, and then we're recovering into a world that is literally unsafe for many bodies to be in. So I think there's a sad and direct parallel there, and hopefully the work that we're doing at Project Heal and that you're doing at World Eating Disorder Action Day can continue to impress upon us the importance of working with these communities.
Thank you. And Rebecca, welcome. You're the new CEO of Project Heal, and I think you've been involved in this community for some time. What are your thoughts about how Project Heal can play a role here?
So I have been in this work for some time. I've been an eating disorder therapist actually for almost a decade, and so I bring that to my work at Project Heal, and I feel very, very committed to dismantling and helping people overcome the barriers to treatment access that they experience. And a big personal problem that I have and that I had when I was practicing at an eating disorder treatment center and in private practice was how essentially with all of the barriers that exist, that recovery becomes a privilege. It's just exorbitantly expensive to access treatment, and a very select section of the population that does get to experience that. And so we focus so much on all of the like personal barriers to treatment. Like, are you willing to do the hard work? Are you motivated? Like all of the like willingness and emotional barriers that people with eating disorders are deeply ambivalent about whether they're ready to recover or not. But like there is a huge slew of people who are deeply motivated and incredibly desperate to recover and absolutely cannot access the resources that they need to do it. And so that I bring that very much to my work. And I think Project Heal plays a pretty unique role in that, being in the US, at least the primary, if not the only organization really dedicated to treatment access in particular. And I think what really comes to bear for me in this work is how intersectional all of these systems of oppression really are. Like how much fat phobia underpins so many eating disorders, and how fat phobia really has its origins in racial dynamics, and how it's not just that the systemic barriers overlap and compound each other, but like the actual roots of what's wrong with people's understanding of what it means to be an embodied person and what it means to be in control, like have deep, deep connections to race and to gender and to all of these things. And so I just have this theory, like Kristina, I think really well articulated, that the reason that the eating disorder population and the recovered population is so heavily populated by thin, white, wealthy women is because those are the only people who recover. And that's why we don't have diversity in our providers, and why we don't have diversity in our treatment centers, is because the people who not only get identified, but get care and then recover and then dedicate their lives to helping people, like they're like, the pool becomes narrow and narrow and narrow, and you have just like the tiniest pool of people at the top who are educating anyone about this. And here we are, looking the way that we do. And it's tragic. It's not right. I'm vehemently opposed to it. And Project Heal is actively involved in all of the ways in which we can participate in figuring out how to change not only how it looks, but how it's actually working.
And just to go further on that, it's training too, right? For providers, to not to mention like we're always looking for more peers in recovery and peers who come from a similar community and look like you do and have experienced similar things. But you also need providers, right? I'm very, very aware the majority of providers are also young, white, thin women. And I think that's on us as well. We've made, higher education is inaccessible. Higher education is incredibly inaccessible. And then beyond that, we as an eating disorder community say, and to be certified as an eating disorder expert, you need to pay another some odd thousands of dollars and go to this training that is in this state. It's incredibly inaccessible. So there are many people who are like first generation therapists who there is a hunger, no pun intended, for this training and good quality treatment for eating disorders. But we really haven't made that accessible as a field, and I think that's something that needs to change as well.
And just before we started, I was sharing with you all that, one of the really cool things about World Eating Disorders Action Day, it's been able to link up people in more than 50 countries across the globe, where actually the thin white woman stereotype is actually not real in these communities. There are other serious issues that you touched on around things like training and just basic access to mental health, clinicians or healthcare workers that have mental health background. And I mentioned I'm talking to somebody in Somalia right now. Who would guess? And that's actually kind of fascinating, because this is not a diet culture country, and it really underpins the issues of mental health and further lack of mental health services. But eating disorders are sort of like, who knows about that? And I wanted to hear a little bit from you all what you think about some of the community models for treating eating disorders that are relatively low cost and are evidence-based. What are your thoughts about how that could help improve some of these issues in the US as well?
I think, Kristina, you should definitely speak to that, since our work at Project Heal is really your passion, was communities of healing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, passionate about all of it, but yeah, I mean, look, I started Project Heal to raise money for treatment for people who couldn't afford it, and obviously from the very beginning, we saw that we got way more applications than we were able to fund, which is an ongoing problem that we're trying to say yes to many, many more people. However, you know, it definitely dawned on me that, and I talk about this a lot, in many ways, I think that having letters behind your name is a signal of privilege rather than how smart you are, right? And we don't necessarily need letters behind our name to deliver great treatment. In fact, much of mental health treatment is, you know, skills that can be trained to really anybody. It's listening, it's motivational interviewing, it's being empathetic, right? These are skills that a lot of folks can do. And when you're thinking about scaling a model that can really reach the, you know, 10% of the population who has eating disorders, you actually can't look to purely clinical models. We just can't help as many people as need help just using clinical models. And I think there's been some amazing work done. You know, Vikram Patel was sort of an early leader in this, but you've seen it really expand out across a number of other disease states where we really see that people who've been there, peers, lay people, can make a huge, huge difference. And I think that, you know, when we're talking about accessibility, absolutely, some people are going to need clinical care and higher intensity clinical care, but certainly for early intervention, relapse prevention, and a huge majority of patients who are struggling, peer support and paraprofessional support, I think, can play a much, much bigger role than it currently is playing.
That's fabulous. And that's really the theme that we're hearing in all of the interviews we've had over the last week. So good to hear we're all on the same page. We now just need to make it happen. Rebecca, I wanted to ask you, the theme of World Eating Disorders Day this year is actually the same one we had last year. We thought we better hit it twice. And it's eating disorders can't afford to wait. Can you speak a little bit about why this is so important and what Project Heal feels about that approach?
Oh, yeah. I mean, first and foremost, the longer that you have an eating disorder, the more treatment resistant it becomes, or the more difficult it is to overcome, the more embedded those, you know, synapse firings are and those habits become. And so obviously, as soon as, like, waiting is never a good idea for recovery. That's first and foremost. And I think as far as, like, sort of culturally and globally what it means for us to say that this is an urgent situation, I think globally we're obviously experiencing a significant uptick in eating disorder occurrence and eating disorder severity because of COVID-19. We're also experiencing, I think, mass unemployment, which also means, like, lack of finances and lack of insurance. And so the problem is growing and the access is decreasing. And so that culmination makes, I think, what Project Heal is doing just incredibly timely. And so we're committed to doing everything that we can right now, fundraising specifically for the care that people need today, when they need it, and not, you know, raising the funds so that we can disseminate it in 2021, probably once a good chunk of those hopefully found more jobs and, you know, maybe they're a little bit more stable. Like, this is actually when they need the care. And so obviously I think eating disorders deserve as much attention as they can get as soon as possible. The moment that you recognize any of the warning signs, like, the sooner you address it, the better. And if you are struggling with an eating disorder, languishing for months or years to get access to the care will only make it more difficult for you to deal with.
And Rebecca, how can people get a hold of you at Project Heal? And we'll put links in the posting as well, but share a little bit about how they can reach out to you.
Yeah, so anyone is welcome to email me. My email is rebecca@theprojectheal.org. But as far as our actual programming, so we have a grant application that anyone in the US can fill out. Unfortunately, we are limited to operating in the US at this time, but All of our support groups have moved online, which has helped us not to be sort of centrally located in really major cities. So people who are in, rural or remote areas are able to participate. And in response to everything going on in the US right now, we're actually going to be opening up a designated group specifically for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And so there are a lot of ways to get plugged in terms of giving. There's a donate button on our website, and we appreciate any support. Like if you have ever benefited from eating disorder treatment, if you have the means, if you're not financially impacted by COVID-19 and you care about eating disorder recovery, like this is when the people who we serve need you the most. So, I mean, we would appreciate any support we can get. So,
and pro bono support as well.
Wonderful. Well, I'm really happy to hear that, and we'll do our best to try to promote it. We don't raise money specifically for World Eating Disorders Day, but what we do is put all of the participating organizations, and Project Heal is one of them, one of the early ones. And actually, Kristina, you were on the steering committee a couple of years ago. So we really encourage people to donate during this time to one of the organizations doing great work, like you guys. And we're just about out of time. I just wanted to leave it for both of you to leave some parting words and share any messages you'd like to give to anyone listening.
I think that the main thing I want to say is that eating disorders are treatable, and full recovery and freedom from your eating disorder is possible. And it's really up to all of us to break down the barriers that prevent people from experiencing the freedom that recovery brings.
Couldn't agree more. Ditto that. And I think the other thing I'll say is the biggest thing that gets me excited is this grassroots organizing. That's why I so love what you're doing with World Eating Disorder Action Day. It's certainly what we did at Project Heal, and I think it fits well with the temperament traits of people who are prone to eating disorders. They tend to be achievement-oriented and ready to get things done. And
oh yeah,
say when you can turn that into a positive and really make these traits work for you, it's phenomenal. And we do know that one of the biggest ways to fight depression and all the angst that's going on right now with everything going on in the world is getting involved in helping others. And I think now is a really, really exciting time to do so. And in the meantime, really allowing many, many more people through that process to share their stories, because we need your stories to help fight this issue.
That's very wonderfully well put. And I'm really excited about your Indigenous group, people of color group as well. Any information you can share, we'll go ahead and put it on the website. Wonderful to talk to you both. I'm so thrilled to meet you, Rebecca. And it's always great to see you, Kristina. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for doing this.